Welcome to this comprehensive guide on using GitLab and GitKraken together. By the end of this video, you'll have the GitLab integration set up with GitKraken. You'll have an idea on how to interact with your remote repositories, and you'll learn how to create your merge requests from within GitKraken. First, we're going to set up the integration. How can I authenticate with repos I have up on GitLab? So if this is your first time using GitKraken and you have repos up on GitLab, one of the first things you want to do is set up the integration between GitKraken and GitLab. And when you open GitKraken for the first time, you will be greeted with this new tab view. And the new tab view is wonderful because you have all the options here on the left side for opening, cloning, or starting a local repository. And we even give you the options to init a repository up on one of these hosting services. So in this case, we might be interested in initializing a repository on GitLab. To set up the integration, I'm actually going to click under the Customize section. There is a section for Preferences. And under Preferences, we're going to navigate to Authentication. And the first integration example that I'll walk through is the GitLab.com integration. So these are repos that you have up on the cloud. The integration setup is pretty quick. You'll be greeted with an option to connect to GitLab. I'm going to click on that option. I already have GitLab open in another browser tab. And so GitKraken will make an API call, ask if I wish to continue the authorization. I will. And once the authorization is complete, I'll be greeted with the success page. And over here back in GitKraken, I'll have a success message saying, hey, you have successfully connected GitKraken with your GitLab.com account. The next thing I want to do is set up SSH. So if you are someone who uses SSH keys to authenticate with your remote repositories, you can ask GitKraken to generate your own SSH key pair and add them to GitLab for you. This will save you the effort of having to manually create your SSH keys elsewhere and then manually add them here in GitKraken. However, if you already have a key pair that you wish to use, over here we have a couple options for adding your private SSH key and your public SSH key. And if you are someone who prefers to use HTTPS to authenticate with your remote repositories, you can set up that authentication by cloning with the HTTPS URL for your GitLab repository. And if you wish to add a remote, I'll show how to do that later, but you would use the HTTPS URL instead of the SSH URL if you wish to authenticate over HTTPS instead. So I'm going to click the Generate SSH Key and add to GitLab, and it is done. So GitKraken created the SSH key pair for me and added them to GitLab. So now I can perform push and pull operations. So any operation that involves my remote, I can now do that over SSH, which is great. But what if I use the self-managed solution? What if I use GitLab Self-Managed? So if that's you, you would just click the GitLab Self-Managed tab under the same section, right? So you go to the Preferences. Under Authentication, we have a tab for GitLab Self-Managed. The difference here is that we will use a personal access token to connect to your GitLab Self-Managed solution. So what we need to set up that integration is the URL, the host domain, for your GitLab Self-Managed instance. And once you enter that, so initially I already have the personal access token included here, but initially this will be blank, and you would first need to enter the host domain. So be sure to do that first. And then once you enter the URL, GitKraken will then present you with this option to generate a token on GitLab. So I'll click this option real quick just to show you what I mean. And you'll be taken to a page where you may set up the personal access token for your GitKraken and GitLab self-managed integration. Once that's done, and I've already generated my personal access token, I've copied it and pasted it into the personal access token section of the integration. And once that's done, I can just click the option to connect and I will be set to go. So in my case, I've already connected, so I'll click cancel instead of connect. But the moment you hit connect, it will go ahead and establish that connection. And the same thing has happened. I can now authenticate with my remote repositories that are on my GitLab Self-Managed instance. And I also have the option of adding SSH key. So because I previously set this up, I had also added my SSH key. Let me quickly remove that to show you what it will look like for you when you first set up the integration. So here again, you're presented with this green button to generate SSH keys and add them to your GitLab instance. So again, it saves you the need of having to create those manually. If you prefer to just browse for your public and private keys, you can do that too. But in my case, I will just click the option to generate the key and add them to GitLab. So again, I may now perform Git operations between my instance of GitKraken and my remote repositories up on GitLab. Now, as a quick refresher, I do want to take a moment to talk about remote repositories. So a remote repository is often called a remote. And it's a Git repository that is hosted somewhere on the internet or some other network. Cloning a remote creates a local version of that repository on your machine. So for example, with this integration we've set up for GitLab, we may now clone repositories down from GitLab, and that connection will be established. So this gives us the sandbox to experiment with changes we plan to make for features or fixes without affecting the original code base. So the great thing about Git in general is that multiple clones of a single remote can be created by other team members, enabling others to collaborate on the same project efficiently with less risk to the original code. So that's one of the major value adds of using Git, and that's one of the benefits of using GitKraken is that it's even easier to take advantage of this feature that Git provides, which I'll now demonstrate through a series of examples here in GitKraken. So we've set up the integration. We are now authenticated with our repositories. Let's now talk about managing our remotes. Let's make some changes and show what it's like to push and pull to your remote repositories using GitKraken. So today's example, we'll be using a sample repository that I prepared that is more on the fun side. So it's a repo that contains the script to one of the Star Wars movies. So when it comes to using GitKraken, your repo might look something like this. This is the support documentation. So if you were to go to support.gitkraken.com, this is the repository that we use to test out changes before we push them to production. And one of the greatest things that you get from using this is the graph. The graph tells you the history of your entire project, and you can click on any commit to see what file was modified, and you can click on the file to view the diff, and it tells you what was changed. So in this case, it's really nice and easy to see that we added the version 6.1.2 release notes, and we added this entire section during this commit. And if I wanted to, I could also edit this file in the working directory if I wish to make additional changes and type more code. So GitKraken is very useful for being able to review your history, click on any commit, and you could even choose to create a branch at any point in time if you wish to make additional changes from that point in time, from that commit. So already GitKraken should save you time by giving you the ability to open repositories you may already have on GitLab and you wish to just pick up where you left off yesterday or wherever you are in your work. If, however, this is your first time using GitKraken, let's actually look at a simplified example so that we can hone in on specific features in the tool. And that's where I'll get into the sample repository, the Star Wars repo that I was talking about earlier. I have two repos. One is on gitlab.com, and the other is cloned from the GitLab Self-Managed solution. So that's just to show you that you can use either one, and you'll still get the same benefits. You will have access to your teammates' remotes. You will have the ability to clone from a list of remotes you already have up on GitLab, and you'll have the ability to create merge requests from within the UI. Here from GitLab, I have the episode 4 script, and to show you what I mean, so let me just click on this file, the cantina scene. So here you can start to see the dialogue that's occurring between these characters, and I have some other text in here as well to represent events that occur within that scene. And what I'll be doing is I'll be making some changes to show you how easy it is to make a change within GitKraken to stage and then commit it. And then once you've made a couple of commits, how can I interact with my remote repository up on GitLab? So in this first example, I'm going to look at the opening crawl. To make this a little easier, I can adjust the zoom. So let's move it to 120%. So that's one nice thing about the UI. You can easily zoom in or zoom out depending on your preferences there. And I'm going to look for the opening crawl markdown file. Now, you could probably already see it here on the right-hand side. I have this commit selected, and it happens to be one of the files that was renamed in this commit. However, say this file was not modified in this commit. How can I find this file? So the first thing I'll show you is that if you hit Command/, you'll be taken to a list of our keyboard shortcuts. And the one I wish to highlight is the one for our fuzzy finder. So the fuzzy finder is a fantastic tool for accessing the different operations that are available in GitKraken. So I'm going to hit Command-P. I'm using Mac. But remember, GitKraken can be used for Windows and Linux as well. And I'm going to click the option to open a file, and I will choose the opening crawl. So here it is, of course. I'll hit Enter, and I'm taken immediately to the opening crawl markdown file. And I'm able to immediately make changes. So here I am making changes. I'm not going to save that here. But what I want to do is I'm going to make some changes and call this opening, let's see, Star Wars. This is actually episode 4. So let's make the change, episode 4, A New Hope. All right, let's save that there. So when you save, so I just hit Command-S on my keyboard to save the file. If you were to try to exit, though, you will get a dialog saying, hey, do you wish to save or exit without saving? In my case, I chose to save, and that immediately staged, or immediately added those changes to my unstaged section. So I can click on this file to view the diff. So when I exit and re-enter the file, I'll be taken to the file diff. And within the diff, you actually have 3 options. You can view the hunk itself of each change. You can view the change that you made in line with the rest of the file. Quite nice. Or if you prefer, you can do a side-by-side view. I'm zoomed in a little bit, so that's why it's blown up. But you get the idea here. You can see what things look like before versus how it looks now with this specific change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stage this change and commit it. And I'm just going to commit it straight to my master branch. So let's added title. All right, so I just staged my file. I named my commit. I hit commit. And now I have that commit node here at the very top for my master branch. So a couple of things have happened. So now that I've made a change locally to my repository, this master branch is now pointing to my commit node. But there's another master branch with a different icon pointing to the commit right before it. And this is exactly what I expect. The computer icon represents your local machine. This is where your local branch is pointing to for your local repository. And the other icon represents your remote up on GitLab. So this is the commit your master branch up on your remote is pointing to. And I'll also direct your attention to that you have a number 1 here with an arrow pointing up. So it's telling me that my master branch is ahead of my remote master branch. And if I wish to get them in sync, I will have to perform a push. If the arrow was pointing in the opposite direction, if it was pointing down, that would mean that my local master is behind by that many commits, and I would need to perform a pull. So I'll show that in the next example. But for now, let's go ahead and push that change. And so the moment I do that, I will see the icon here in line with my local icon. And before I even do that, let's actually look at the repository really quickly. So here I am on GitLab.com. Here is the repository as it appears on GitLab. And if we click the opening crawl dot markdown file and we take a look at the code directly in GitLab, we will see that the title that I added has not yet been included in this markdown file. And that's to be expected as I have not performed a push yet. So the moment I perform a push, my remote icon and my local icon are now in line with master, and there's no longer 2 master branches. They're now pointing to the same commit. If I were to come back here to gitlab.com, and if I were to refresh the page to take a look at the file again, I will see that indeed my change made it to this file. So yes, episode 4, A New Hope, has been added to the opening crawl. And there we have it. That's how you can push changes that you make to your local repository up to GitLab. So that's the first example. Let's go the other direction now. So I want to simulate as though another team member has pushed a change up to the remote repository, and I need to pull that change down to get my local repo up to date. So to simulate that, I'm actually going to go back to gitlab.com, and I'm going to make a modification to a different file. So in this case, I'm going to the final scene. So we're going from the opening crawl all the way back to the final scene. Let's go back one stage here. Okay. So the final scene.markdown file, I'm going to modify this scene directly within GitLab. So let's click Edit. And there is a part where Chewbacca receives a medallion. So Princess Leia places a medallion around Chewbacca's neck, and he's just so happy. If you recall in the movie, that actually does not happen, and I think this is an actual script change that they made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that out. So Chewbacca growls. There we go. And let's commit that change. I'll just use the default text there. Okay, so I have committed a change, and the reason I have done this is I am simulating as though some other collaborator on this repository has pushed this change up to my remote repository. And now if I go back to GitKraken, and if I perform a fetch from the pool drop-down menu, which is the first option when I click it, my icons will update. So here again, I see that the situation has flipped, that my local master is now below or behind my remote master, that my remote master is ahead by 1 commit. And that's denoted here as well over here on the left-hand panel, where I see that my master is indeed behind by 1 commit. If I were to look at this file here, I will see the change that I had made. I was like, okay, I see that in the remote, someone has removed this text and added this word. Do I want to add that to my local? Do I want to add this change to my local? If the answer is yes, then I will perform a pull to stay up to date. So let's go ahead and do that. And as you might expect, the pull comes in. My local directory will be updated so that it includes the same changes that were up on my remote. So now everything is in sync. And in terms of cloning, you can always clone a repository from your list of remotes. So in this case, you can go to the gitlab.com integration, and you can clone from a list of repositories that are already up on your remote. So in my case, in my gitlab.com account, I have all of these repositories that I can clone from. And if I were to go to my GitLab Self-Managed instance, I'll see the list of remotes I have here. These are all permissions-based, so these are the remotes, these are the repositories that I have access to. But what if I make a mistake? So what do you do if you made a commit in error and you realize that after you have performed the commit? How would you go about undoing that change? So thankfully, GitKraken actually makes it much easier to undo changes that, especially if you have only made the changes locally on your machine. And so let's go through another example where I make a mistake, and let's go ahead and undo that change. So in my case, I'm going to modify the garbage masher scene. So again, let's pull up the fuzzy finder by hitting Command P. Let's open a file. Let's search for the garbage masher scene. And here we are in the garbage masher scene. And the file is immediately editable. So what I want to do is I'm going to look for a part. I'm going to get Command F, and I'm going to look for the part where there's an explosion. There we go. So suddenly there is a great explosion. So let's take that out. I don't want to have an explosion. And I also notice in this scene that one of the stormtroopers bonks their head. Stormtrooper. There we go. I'm going to hit Command S to save. Okay. So again, if I were to exit here, I will have all the files that I've modified here on the right side. In the center here, I have the whip node. So whenever you make a change in GitKraken, it'll be placed in the whip node. I can, for example, if I click on a different commit, I can always review the files that were modified, added, renamed, or deleted. If I click on the whip node, I see what is currently being changed right now. And I can click on those files to see the changes so far. So here I click on that file, the garbage master scene, and I see in this hunk that this text was removed, that these lines were affected. I see specifically with this highlighting which text was removed, and I see in the line that was added which text was added. Awesome. So next I'm going to stage this file. So you have the option to stage the file one at a time, or you may choose to stage all files if you know that you're going to commit everything. So I'll go ahead and click Stage All Files, but just know that you have the option to fine-tune what gets staged and what maybe gets discarded for later. And then let's say Stormtrooper bonks their head. So we do have spell check when writing commits. Okay, and I will commit that change. So okay, I've made a change locally. I now realize when I review my changes that, you know what, that Stormtrooper should not have bonked their head. That was a mistake. I need to undo this commit. So thankfully in GitKraken, the UI gives you a very easy option to just hit the undo button, and this will undo the change completely. So when you hit undo, we will place that file back in the staging area, and you can choose to make additional changes, unstage certain lines. You can change it up so that you can either recommit those changes, or if you choose that you don't wish to keep that change after all, you have the option to right-click and discard the change altogether. And if you wish to discard all the files that were in that whip node, you can also just choose to discard all changes. So I'm going to do that. When you perform a discard, it will ask you, do you wish to reset back to where you were before? And in my case, I do. I did not wish to make that change at all. So I have now reverted my master branch back to this commit with the parent ID D429FA. This is just the last section of the commit SHA. If you hit the copy option, you will actually get the entire commit SHA. So there you go. GitKraken makes it easy to undo commits that you've done. You can also perform other actions like a merge and a checkout, and even a couple other actions as well. Okay, so now we're getting to the last example that I prepared for this video. How do I create a merge request using GitKraken? I've made a feature branch, and I wish to have someone else take a look at the changes that I'm proposing for my project. So to simulate that example, let's go ahead and create a feature branch inside of GitKraken, which will demonstrate how easy it is to create a branch here. So one of the powerful things about GitKraken is that you can choose any commit. I can right-click on any commit node and choose to create a branch there. So that's one way that you can create a branch, check it out, and quickly jump your local directory back to that point in time. So in my case, when I'm working with support documentation, I run a local instance of the support docs, and so I'm able to revert the state of my repo back to that point in time, run the local version, and see where it is, how it would look in production. So in my case, I will be creating a feature branch that represents the director cut of episode 4. So let's go ahead, and I can either choose the right-click option to create a branch here, or I can choose to create a branch with this button right here. So let's call this director cut. I see that I have made a mistake with my branch creation, so let's hit undo. Okay, so I didn't check out that branch. I wanted to undo the checkout because now I have the option to delete that if I wish to delete it, but you also have an option to rename it. So let's right-click, click rename, and let's take out that typo. Another nice quality of life feature for GitKraken. Okay, now I'm ready to check out that branch. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the Cantina scene this time. So again, I'm going to hit Command P for the fuzzy finder. We're going to click Open File, and I'll just search the word Cantina. And here I am. I'm jumped straight into the Cantina scene markdown file. And what I want to do for this director cut is I wish to take out the section where Han Solo shoots first. So let's take that out completely. Deleted. All right, Command S to save. So again, the cantina scene was added to the staging area. If I were to exit out of this file, I would see that I now have a whip node in the graph. Very similar to what we saw previously, right? So here's our previous commit to give you some idea. And here's the whip node when I click on it again. One quick tip, a little side deviation here. If you weren't ready, say you wish to work on something else and you wish to stash this change, you do have the ability to name your stash just by typing into the whip node. You can hit the stash icon, and now those file changes, I should say, are in your stash, which allows you to continue work on that branch without those changes having to get in the way. So here it is. The whip node is now the stash. I can see the file that was modified. Here it is. If I am ready to continue work, I have either the option to pop the stash, or when you right-click on the stash, you can also apply it. Applying will take the changes in the stash and just place it within the branch that you're currently checked out. Pop will delete the stash but still apply those changes, which is what I want. So in my case, I wish to apply the change that I had made previously right onto my director cut branch. Okay, so I'm ready to make my change. As you can see, the stash name pre-populated the commit message. That's nice, but I want to actually make this more specific. Han does not shoot burst. And let's stage the change. And as a quick review, let's click the file to review the diff. I can see that this entire section was removed. I can see it here in line with the rest of the file, or side by side as well. Okay, and I'm ready to commit that change. Let's go ahead and commit it, which will then create an additional commit node here in the graph. So it's at this point in time that you can actually start creating your merge request from within GitKraken. You do, of course, have the ability to continue work. You can make additional commits, as you work through these things. And you even have the option to squash the commits before you create a merge request, should you wish to do that. Just to show you really quickly, if you hold the Shift key and multi-select a number of commits, you do have an option to do an interactive rebase. And one of the options will be to squash. But you can also reword or drop commits altogether. So, very nice tool there. I definitely recommend taking a look there. Okay, let's back to the merge request. So to create a merge request, you just drag and drop the branch you are targeting here. So I'm going to drag and drop this onto my master branch. And here, I'll be presented with an option to push the director cut and start a pull request, which makes sense. And let me exit out of there to explain. So right now, this director cut branch only exists on my local. And in order to create the merge request, it actually has to exist on GitLab first before it can do it. So origin is the name of my GitLab Remote. I'm just going to perform the push now since we're here. And the push is complete. Okay, so now let's repeat that. But this time I can actually drag and drop it to master here. So either option will work. You can always drag and drop a branch from the graph to the left panel or vice versa. It's up to you. But in my case, I'm going to start the pull request, the merge request. GitKraken will pre-populate the information for you based on that action. So it will pre-populate the from repo information and the to repo information based off of which branch I dragged and which branch it was dragged to. One of the nice things about the GitLab integration is that you also have the ability to include assignees to your pull request. So in my case, I'm the only contributor to this repo, so I'll just add myself. But if you have other team members here, you can do that as well. And if you do have labels, we will support the ability to add those labels onto your merge request as well. So let's go ahead and create the merge request or pull request, as you may also know it. And there it is. It's been created. We can actually view it on GitLab right now. Okay, here it is. So you have the ability to perform your code review. So this is where you and your team members may have the conversation, see what additional changes need to be made. And this is where you have the option to then merge. Before I do that, let's look back and GitKraken. So the UI changed just a little bit here. You'll notice that the pull request, the merge request icon, there's a little branch icon right here that appears next to the director cut. And that's to tell you that there is a pending merge request on this branch. If for whatever reason you did not have the GitLab tab open and you wish to view it, you have the option to just right-click on the branch and view the pull request on GitLab.com. Same thing from the pull request that now appears on the left panel. You have an added benefit with GitLab of, we'll show you any assignee that's been associated to this merge request, and we'll just give you a brief synopsis on what this merge request is. And if you right-click on it, you have the ability to also view the merge request on GitLab.com. So in my case, everything looks good, or maybe let's fast forward to a conversation that happens, maybe some additional changes are made, and we reach the point where we're ready to merge. So I will hit merge. The merge is complete. So now if I go back to GitKraken, let's go ahead and perform a fetch to quickly refresh. The pull request icon disappears, or the merge request icon disappears, and now I can see that the branches are now updated as well. So I can see here that the merge went through. This is the file that was modified, and indeed, this is the section this is the text that was removed, which is exactly what I wanted in this director's cut. So that's how easy it is to create a merge request within GitKraken for your GitLab repositories. And you have the ability to also add assignees and labels, which should hopefully save you some time when you're putting that all together. One last thing is you'll notice that my local master branch is now out of date with my remote. And I see that with the 2 icon with the down arrow over here. So if I wish to get that change in, I would just need to double click on my master branch and perform a pull. That's what I showed you earlier. But if you want to see another way of doing the same thing, you could right click on the existing master branch and click the option to reset the commit to here. So if you feel comfortable with making this sort of change, you could do the same thing to achieve the same results. I often find that performing a reset hard, discard all is pretty nice. Because GitKraken gives me the visibility into seeing what that change will mean, I feel pretty comfortable making those changes. One last thing that I'll show you here in the GitKraken UI is that if you do have a repository already open in GitKraken and you wish to add another remote, I'll direct your attention here to the left-hand panel. Under the remote section, you do have the ability to add additional remotes using the integration. This is another feature of the GitLab integration. In my case, my episode for GitLab.com example does not have additional collaborators, so that's why there's no additional repos in this drop-down menu. But you also have an option to add a remote manually using the URL. So if you have a remote that exists elsewhere that you wish to add manually, you can name it at either the SSH or the HTTPS URL here in the pull or push URL section, and you'll be able to add that remote. Okay, so in this video we covered a lot. We covered how to set up your GitLab integration, whether you're using GitLab.com or the GitLab Self-Managed solution. We've talked about performing some of the fundamental operations between your local and remote repositories. Cloning, pushing, pulling, fetching. There are a number of other actions that you can perform as well. The last thing that we covered was how to create a merge request using the GitLab GitKraken integration. And we see how easy it is to add assignees and labels and see how the merge request process affects the GitKraken UI. So you can follow along with additional changes that are being made as the code review continues, right? Or is concluded. So if the merge does go through, you'll see that merge reflected in the GitKraken graph. So hopefully this gives you a great idea. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of how GitKraken can save you some time when you're working with your repositories and your projects. And it makes it so much easier to see what your teammates are working on, especially when you add their remotes and see where they are with their feature branches or see where they are with any other branches they may have. That concludes the video for today. Thanks for watching, and feel free to take a look at some of the other video resources we have on the GitKraken YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.